Hi everyone, I am Vasanth Srivatsa. As she has given a wonderful introduction about me, I make YouTube videos and I tweet about JavaScript and I teach students about JavaScript and I take freelance classes. So today we'll be talking about how you can get started with Tailwind CSS, and we'll also look at what this Tailwind CSS thing is, right? And why should you get on, and what is this new hot technology? So in the pre CSS era, this screenshot, as you can see, has been taken from 1990s, where CSS was not really a thing. And back in those days, what happened was you had HTML, and HTML had formatting tags. So have you ever used the center tag in HTML? You can give me a yes or a no in the chat, or yeah, right. So I'm seeing a few, right? So the center tag is from that era. So it's HTML. I think it's HTML 3.5 when a lot of formatting tags were introduced. Before that, all websites used to look like this, which is not really, or which does not have any personality to it, right? So then what happened is, as HTML 3.5 was introduced, formatting became a thing, and then web development in general became much more complicated. A general rule of thumb is HTML is always to show your content, or to have your content, not to style or not to do anything else. It's just a skeleton where you can keep your content. And this is what happened when HTML started giving formatting options, where you have where development became more complicated, and it was much more frustrated than it is today. So then the worldwide consortium came up with CSS. So it's during 1990s, HTML 3.5, and this is how cascading style sheet, or CSS, looks like, right? So CSS job was to format and style the text, style the elements, and HTML's job was to have the content, and JavaScript was used to add interactivity. So this is how CSS came into existence back in the 1990s. And before that, websites used to look like this, which is crazy, and crazy if you think about how they look today, right? So now let's talk about so then what happens is, within 2000 within 2006 and 7, what happened was, let's take the situation where you are a software developer and you make websites all your day. Think about it. How about you make a button? Let's say you are making a button and you're doing the same thing again and again and again, writing CSS from the scratch, right? Just pure CSS, writing again. So it's kind of like, at the end of the day, you were basically reinventing the wheel, where you're redoing the same button, redoing the same layout and things like that. So now what happened was, the so-called CSS frameworks emerged, which were basically pre-designed or pre-styled or pre-opinionated pre-opinionated styles for your HTML elements. So you could just drop that CSS file in. You will have a lot of already choices made for you. And what happened was that you had to, there were several frameworks like these, and this was the breakthrough of CSS. And everyone here must have heard about Bootstrap, right? Back then, what happened was that CSS3 didn't have all these grid and Flexbox and all this fancy layouts that we have today. So Bootstrap was the first one. It's made by Twitter. Bootstrap was the first framework that brought in a comprehensive 12-column grid layout, where you could place things much more dynamically than you did with pure CSS. And all of you also know that if you let's say you make a nav bar in a while using Bootstrap, then you will have a specific defined style. It's going to look a particular way. And the same thing happens with almost a lot of elements. So here I have an example. I have an example code snippet about all the buttons in Bootstrap, and you can see how they have like a class of btn and btn dash whatever the variant of button you want, and they basically provide you with multiple variants, and you can use them wherever you want, right? So and they look like how it is shown down below. So this was the CSS framework thing. Now let's talk about the revolutionary framework. Let's talk about Tailwind. Why is it revolutionary? So if you look at both the snippets, you will see that there is Bootstrap, which says btn and btn dash primary, and that would give you a defined button that looks, you all know how Bootstrap button looks, but that would, have like a an effect, and that would have like an outline. When you click, it interacts. So I think it's going to, it will be purple in color, and it has a set defined style. But down below, if you look at the example, the down below one is for Tailwind CSS, and you see very strange classes right there. It says BG blue 500, it says text white, it says font bold, and things like that. So now let's I'll quickly show you what exactly these fonts, this CSS classes mean. These are called utility classes. These are not predefined element classes. They don't style an element. They are utilities that you can use to style whatever you want, basically. So let's talk about it. So BG is background color. You have several background colors already, defined with Tailwind, but you can quite easily customize them according to your, your website's needs. Then you have text white, that is font color or color in pure CSS. Then you have font bold, that is font weight set to 700 in pure CSS. Then you see this thing called px2. Px2 is padding, that is on left and right. 2 is, there's a set particular value for 2, and you have different numbers you can assign depending on how much padding you want, or how much of anything you want in Tailwind, right? Then you have py, which is again the same thing like as in px, but it is on top and bottom. Then you have rounded. Rounded is basically border radius. You have rounded sm, rounded rounded lg. Then you have rounded xl. Then you have rounded full, and then it goes on like that, right? So this is how Tailwind looks, and that is why it is revolutionary. The fact that you don't get a button predefined. Now I'll show you once we get into the practical part of it, but you can see this is why Tailwind is quite different than any other framework like Bootstrap or Bulma or Semantic or any other popular typical CSS framework, where you don't get to have a button or a card or anything like that. You just have utility classes. Think of it like Tailwind converts raw CSS properties into classes, so you can use them right in your HTML without opening a CSS file. So ideally, you would never, like, once you have Tailwind, you would never open CSS, but that doesn't always work out. All right, let's move forward. And 1 second, do I have another thing? Yeah. So why use Tailwind, right? Let's talk about a few benefits and a few drawbacks about why use Tailwind. Tailwind lets you design stuff much faster than writing CSS. Usually what happens is we switch between the CSS file and the HTML file, or if we are doing React or any other framework, we keep switching between the CSS file and the thing, and it slows down the workflow quite a bit. And with Tailwind, you don't have to do that. Once you have set up Tailwind correctly on your project, most of the time you will never have to look at the CSS file again. It's only for those edge cases where Tailwind does not support anything. So you're designing almost like 5 times faster than what you used to, because it's so quick and everything is right in front of you. As soon as you have HTML, you have both the markup, the skeleton, the content, as well as the styles embedded in just one file. So you can just quickly glance through it, and you'll get an idea of how it's being really displayed. So yeah, and then one other benefit that Tailwind has is smaller CSS bundles. To explain this, the second point, I'll go back one slide before. Let me see, which one was it? Yep, this one. And notice in this thing we have two classes, a BTN class and a card class. And if you look, there are certain properties in both the classes that are common. So in most developers, who are amateur, who are not professional, like hardcore CSS developers, what they do is they put properties which are repeating on the same class, and this makes it quite inefficient because you are sending the same property again and again and again for multiple classes, and obviously you will have multiple classes on this, right? So this is why you almost end up with a lot of CSS. You almost end up with a CSS file that's mostly bigger than what it should have been. So that is one of the problems that Tailwind inherently solves, and that is because you have, let's say I have padding, I have px and py, as we have seen in the other screenshot. Because I have so now that px and py are its own classes, I'm going to apply px and py wherever, in whichever element it is required in my HTML, or whichever component it's required if I'm using my React or Svelte or Angular Vue or any other framework like that. So now, because there are no duplicate properties in your CSS, just it's all whatever is necessary is that's the only thing that's there in my CSS. In larger projects, using Tailwind lets you load your website faster and lets you maintain it in a much more cleaner way, because we've all seen what happens when we have like a huge CSS file with a whole bunch of classes and a whole bunch of properties that are basically repeating on themselves in all those classes. So that's the thing. If you're there are certain situations where you have to do this in pure CSS, like you literally have to repeat classes, but with Tailwind that's completely gone. You can simply have like let's say a text center is the class for text align center. So you have both the value and the property name combined into one single thing, and that's why it's much more simpler. It takes less space, right? So now let's look at those are the two benefits of why you should be using Tailwind. But we also have, as we have pros with any framework, we'll also have cons with it. So let's just quickly look at the cons. The cons are, yeah, HTML is going to look like look much more like C++. So this is going to be the HTML is going to be much more verbose. It's not going to be clean anymore. You'll have direct CSS properties as classes in your HTML. This is going to look much more what do I say? This is going to look much more confusing and complicated and frustrating in the beginning, but as you get used to it, it's going to look much better, and you will quickly understand, like you'll get both the style as well as the content in one shot, and you don't have to like open the CSS file and things like that. But yeah, in the beginning, when HTML looks like this, that's the face that I have, is what? Yeah, that kind of works out. Now that's the only drawback. Or yeah, I'm sorry, we have one more. Right, so I think, yeah, that's the only drawback that we have. Let's move forward and let's talk about a fun fact. Do you think I was presenting the whole thing in MS Excel, or I mean not MS Excel obviously, but MS PowerPoint or Google Slides? Nope. This presentation was made in Tailwind CSS. Isn't that cool? You can make anything with Tailwind CSS. And you can check out this presentation yourself. It's live right now on my website. You can check out at vasanth.tech slash this short code, which is the WVV3. And yeah, this entire presentation was made using Tailwind CSS. So now let's get to the design. Let's design a simple, I'll design a simple card component in Tailwind. And so the thing is here, I'm going to do live coding in front of you, and I've intentionally like not prepared anything about it, so that you know my thought process. And we'll also start from scratch on how to get started with Tailwind CSS. That was all the theory that we had to cover. I see a question by Daksh. I'll get back to that once the practical is over. So let me just give me a second. I'll switch my screens and we'll get started. Let's go to my desktop. And let's make a folder called Tailwind card. Within it, let's open VS Code here. I hope this speed is fine. Also, one more quick note: if anyone is not able to understand my English, or anyone is more comfortable in Hindi, I do know Hindi and I can speak. So you can ask me questions once the coding is over within Hindi, and I'll be happy to answer you. Yeah. So let's open VS Code here using code dot. That will open VS Code. Let me quickly zoom in so that things are much more visible here. All right, so let's make a new file. I'm just going to say index.html, and I'm going to hide my sidebar. Now I'm going to use an exclamation. This is emit, and emit lets you basically write your HTML much more quicker than you would normally. You'll see how it works. So exclamation is basically a boilerplate or a template, and let's call it Tailwind card. All right, now I'm going to use the extension live server to basically show you the result of it. You will see in a second. I'm just going to do open with live server. You can also get this extension by going to the extensions panel and searching for live server. It's really, really useful if you want to try things out in web development, and without having like a complex setup. We'll talk about two ways you can get started with Tailwind, and I'm going to show you both the ways. But let's first start our server. Let's do open with live server, and it opens obviously on the wrong monitor. Just give me a second. Okay, so now that we have a plain canvas to play with, and let's get started. So first, I'm going to go to tailwindcss.com. This is their website, and this is where I can find out the documentation. So let me quickly put it through. There are two main ways of using Tailwind. One, which is using your build system, like let's say you have Webpack, or you have Vite, or you have any other like Rollup or Browserify or any other bundler where you bundle your code. Or if you're using any front-end framework like Vue, React, or Angular, or Svelte. The other way is using the CSS file, which is just like how we do with Bootstrap. But I really, really recommend that you set up the full thing, like install using npm install, and then have a bundler. I prefer I'm using White currently, but you can also use Rollups, or Parcel, or any of the bundlers that you see. For the sake of simplicity and to just get started, I'm going to use the CSS file. So I'm going to go to installation, scroll down a bit more, and I'm going to go on this section where it says install via CDN. And as you can see, I can't customize the default theme, or I can't use like custom fonts and things like that with this setup. Although I'll show you a trick if you wait long enough. which will let you install Tailwind with least effort and will give you the most customization possible. So I'm going to copy this CSS file here, just copy like that, and go to my link, go to my head and say open a link tab and just paste it. So now we should officially have Tailwind here. Just to show you how Tailwind works, I'm going to disable the link tag and let's have an H1 here. Let's say hello world. So this is a typical, hello world text without any CSS, right? But you'll see something interesting happening as soon as I enable Tailwind. Did you notice how the hello world's font changed and the H1 became much more smaller than how it is? So if I let's say I make a paragraph with the same text, you'll see they both almost they both look exactly the same. Essentially what happens is with the one more advantage with Tailwind is that with traditional CSS frameworks, there are cases where the button looks different in all different browsers. Not all browsers support the same CSS, and there are slight differences which are going to cause a lot of problems when you're using a framework or when you're trying to especially override. So Tailwind basically resets everything into looking very plain and very simple in the beginning, so that you can you can get it to exactly how you want it to look like. So I'm going to remove this H1, and let's say you wanted to change the color of the of the body. Let's do class. So everything is classes, as I told you. Let's set a background, and to set a background you can again refer to the documentation, but I'm going to refer to the color palette reference. You can go to the documentation, scroll down, and you will see colors under customization. If you scroll down, you'll see Tailwind by default provides a lot of colors to you. These are raw colors. They are not designed, or they are not opinionated in any way. So let's pick 100. All I have to do here is just say BG gray, and you can see that Tailwind has like amazing intelligence. So all I have to do is BG gray 100, and you should see that the body is a little bit dimmer now. Now let's make a card UI here, and for that I'm going to have a div, or yeah, let's have a div, or let's go with a div. Before we go on continuing this, I have a design in mind. Let me quickly show you what we'll be making today. And so only this card will be making, this one. If we have time, if you want to stay a little longer, we can definitely try out the other ones, but we'll be making this one. And let's do a class here. Let's do a class of right. So it's white. So I'm going to do BG white. There we go. We have white. And if I go, there's nothing obviously because we don't have any content. So I'm going to put H3 here. Let's say someone for now. We'll pick a random name. But now you can see that it's white and the background is a little bit gray. Would it be possible that I can stack these together? Let me quickly see. Yeah, that's much better. Cool. Yeah. So now that we have it, let's use Flexbox. Yeah, let's use Flexbox to center everything. First, I'm going to say, just to make sure that my body is of 100% height or full height, I'm going to do H dash full. So H dash full, if I hover over it, okay, this apparently does not work in when you're using a CDN, but it should actually show you the CSS behind this particular class. So H full is height full. I'm also going to add a class to the HTML element itself and say H full right there. then I want, basically the aim is to have the card right in the center. So we're basically centering things. What 90% of us will be doing all day long if we are web developers. So let's do flex here, display flex. Now you see it, the card is now aligned in a different orientation. I'm going to do, let's do, all right, let's wrap everything in another div so that it doesn't take like full width. There we go. Now it's much better. Now to center things, we have to do um, justify center. That's going to center, things horizontally. To center vertically, we have to do items center. Right. So now we have something which is exactly on the dead center. And as you can see, it's already like responsive. I mean, there's nothing here to be responsive, but it adjusts to the window size. All right. Now we want it to look like a card, like a real card. And you can see there's some shadow here. So let's add some shadow. So for shadows, there are different, let me zoom out a little bit so that my interface looks a little better. All right, that's looking much worse than I thought. Just give me a second. Oops, we don't want emoji. No, no, not that. Okay. So we have different, levels of shadow. You can see shadow LG, shadow MD, and things like that. We'll try, if there is enough time, we'll even do a dark theme, which is quite cool. So let's go with shadow MD. Let's save, and you can see we have a small shadow. Now I want to add some padding. I want to add padding for all four corners. So let's do P dash P-4. All right, so you can see there's some uniform padding across all four sides. If I wanted to do padding on the x-axis, I could just do px, and you will see how it's padding left and padding right. And you can see if I do py, it's on the other side. But I want it to be uniform, so I'm going to do this. Oh wait, I'm going to remove everything. Now here, something that I've realized is in this card design, 1 second. Let me see if I can. Okay, that's much better. So in this design, what we have is we have an image that's covering the top part of the card, and then we have a profile picture, which is an overlay. So to get this effect, we shouldn't be having any padding in the card itself. We will have a container with content, which will have all the content along with the padding. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply cut the padding here, wrap this under a div, and then, oops, let's say P-4 right there. Now, if I go back, you still see the same thing, but we have another div. So the next thing that we'll do, I guess, is I want to round off the corners. This looks really sharp, and we never really want like sharp edges. Same thing, just like shadow, we have rounded, and then you have rounded MD after rounded MD, just like shadow MD. After rounded MD, you have rounded XL, and then rounded 1XL, 2XL, 3XL, 4XL, and then up to 6XL, and so on. So let's use rounded 2XL maybe. Let's see how that looks. Oh, that looks way too much. Let's go back to rounded XL. Still looks a bit too much for me. Let's do rounded LG. It's starting to look good. How about rounded MD? Yeah, let's go with rounded MD. That looks much more, squarey and boxy because we're working with a card. All right. Now let's place the image. What are we supposed to do here? Let's do img hashtag. No, it's not a hashtag. So let's call it profile background, or let's just remove alt for now because it gets confusing to have the markup there. let's add a class here, and let's go to unsplash.com. That's where I pull all my images from for my web development projects. Let's go to wallpapers, find a random image. Let's see which one. This one looks really cool. Windows 11, huh? Oh, this is even cooler. Okay, so the way I'm going to use the image is I'm going to copy the image ID, go back to the card, and there is this API called Unsplash, where to directly get an image instead of viewing the page in Unsplash. There is a technique. You can use source.unsplash.com, and if you say /random, as you can see here, it's going to pull like a random image every single time you load something. And since we want a specific image, you can see ways to pull from a specific user, from likes and things like that. But we want a specific photo, and that too we want a specific size. So this is what I'm going to do, a URL which is like similar to that. So let's go back, let's have the src, let's paste the ID, and we will type in https source.unsplash.com/ and then we have the ID. I want to see what's the width of the card that we have. So let's inspect. Right. I guess we can dock this in the bottom too. Let's go to the element itself. This is 97 pixels high, and then 56 pixels. Oh wait, this is 97 pixels wide and 56 pixels. So I'm going to do something like 50. Okay, yeah, let's get going. So how about we want a rectangle, right? So how about a 300 into 500? Let's see if the image works out. Okay, we've got a much bigger image, but we do have our class. We have been zoomed in way too much. Let's get back. Okay, this is how it is. And I guess I flipped the values. We needed 500 by 300. Come on, load up. Is that too high? Okay, now we have like an okay-ish image. I just want it to be much more smaller. Let's do maybe 100 by 200. How about that? Nah, again, I guess I flipped it. 200 by 100. On. That seems good enough. Right. I zoom in. Does that? Okay, that looks way more pixelated. Let's do 300 by 200. Much better. We'll get like a bigger image. I'm going to reset the zoom here. And yep, so this is what we have at the top. But if you see here, for those who have like a keen eye, you'll notice that we have rounded corners in the bottom, but the top has lost the rounded corners. So let's go back and fix that. For that, I'm going to say in the card here, I'm going to say overflow hidden. And that's going to hide whatever is overflowing out of the div, which are those tiny edges at the top. So as soon as I save that, you see card is now rounded at the top, and it's square. It's flat at the bottom of the image, just like how exactly we wanted it to be. All right, now let's see how far we have come through our design. We have an image. Okay. Now we need a profile. Let's get going. For the profile, I'm going to have again another image here. And this time I'm going to, again, I guess I have to go back to Unsplash. Let's search for profile and see what we get. Yeah, this is a pretty popular image that I've seen, which is being like used in every single HTML template that we have. Let's remove alt. Let's say HTTPS source.unsplash unsplash.com/the image ID, and then this I want 300 by 300, and we get a square image. Now the job, our job is to take this image, make it much more smaller, and place it in this kind of way. So let's add a class to it. We're in Tailwind. I guess we'll keep this class so that I can show you a cool effect later. Let's here do w dash, let's do 10, width of a 10, and it's much more smaller now. Can I align it to the top? Yep. So we have a much more smaller image. How about we have width of 20, and let's do a height of 20 in case the image is not properly like dimensional, then we can have it this way. We also want it to be rounded, but we want it to be rounded. We want it to be a circle, so we want a border radius 100%, which in Tailwind is rounded full. You can look up all these classes in Tailwind's documentation, or you can use their amazing autocomplete, which is quite easy to understand. All right, let's move forward. And we do have, so if you look in the image, there's a slight border here. There's a slight gap between the profile photo and the background image. The way we can achieve this is by using some border. So let's add border. Let's do border 4. And the next thing that we want to specify is a color. So let's do border white. That's the color of our card. So we do have a border now. You may notice that by the slight gap here in between the card and in between the cover and the profile image. Let's get going. We want to specify this. We want to move this a little bit up. So here I'm going to say minus margin so that I can move it, top from where it is. So minus MT, margin top. So we have used a height of 20. So I'm going to do a height of 10 to exactly push it 50%. Okay, we seem to be having a problem, which is we do not have the border yet. Don't worry, we'll just fix it up in just a few minutes. And one more thing that we have here is the image is not really centered. Can I use MX Auto here? All right, so that works. Cool. So we have something that looks similar to this design, except we do not have the border. So let's go and fix that up. Border white, border 4. Why do we not have a border? Let's redo this again, I guess. Border 4. Let's do border solid and then border white. Where do I? Oh, it's not border, it's border. Okay, we do not seem to be having a border yet. Let's take an alternative approach to kind of save time. We're already an hour. Let's take an alternative approach, and I'm just going to wrap this in another div. And I'm going to take everything with the class here and paste it right there. It's going to look a little bit different, I know, but we can still use the same trick, which it was overflow hidden, to make the image rounded again. Still, the border does not seem to be working. I was wondering, what if we can add some padding to it? So let's do P2 maybe. Is that okay? That does not give us the desired effect. Let's see why border did not work. I guess the time has come for us to refer to the amazing Tailwind documentation. You can one cool tip that I can give you is you can press / on your keyboard once you go to the home page, and you'll get this beautiful search page, I would say, a filter page. So now I can type in border here, and so you can see border 4. We have border width 4 pixels, right? Border indigo 800. We do have. Okay, so let's actually inspect the element and see what's exactly going on here. So we do have border color. We do have border opacity, border style solid, border width 4. Okay, I see something here. All right, that's quite interesting. How about we apply a margin instead of a border here? Let's do M-1 maybe. Or let's do P-1. Does not seem to be working. I guess where the problem is I was, all right, let's try setting a background here. Maybe BG white. No? Kind of interesting. Ooh. Just give me a second. Why does the border not work? Worked in my tutorial and I did practice. Does not seem to be working now. Why? Let's do. So now that I see, there seems to be border in the background, but there does not seem to be a border at the top. So you see there's a slight border in the bottom. If I increase this to, let's say, gray 500, you will see there is a border right there. That's that. Well, I never faced that. That's kind of weird. Can I do? Can I have fix the issue using Z index? No, not really. That's quite interesting. Okay, I guess we will, to fix the issue, we will have to use the alternative route, which is, making a custom div. Let's do width and height to be 20, rounded to be full, overflow to be hidden. I just need a white, okay, let's do a P of H, just kind of, something to let the image show off. And we do not get the image. Why? I mean, we do not get the div. Why? Can I troubleshoot? Okay, that's there. Oh, we don't have a background, I guess. Come on. Is it really updated? Wait a second. There's no image here. Wait a second. There's no image here. What? That is kind of strange. Let me stop my live server, close the page, and maybe retry. Does not seem to be working. Why? So this is the thing, and border opacity, border radius, overflow hidden, width and height. We do have a background color. So okay. Now I get it. Now I get it. We do not want BG white now. We want BG gray, something else, not white, because it does not seem to be aligning properly with this. BG 400 and Z-10 maybe. Or how about we put some minus Z index so this gets pushed backwards. minus z dash 10. Okay, I guess z index to the rescue. How can I throw it back? All right, so we can put a negative z index without customizing Tailwind. That's a bummer. Yeah, we have to customize Tailwind using config. Why does the image not go? How about I put it right there? Or how about we make it flex? Flex. Now, yeah, now everything is kind of weird now. Let's do flex call to set the flex direction to column. Now you have both again. And can I put it down, and does that really work out? Yes. Okay, that's what I was missing up. All right. Oh, that was a lot. That was a lot. All right. Do I still have my image? I think I can now do BG white. Cool. I have a white background. All I have to do is go back and put my image in. And yeah, because both are like same size, it's like that. But how about we we search for width here, and we pick something which, like, how about we pick 16? So w dash right, w dash 16. So let's w dash 16, not 156, and h dash 16. Okay, so we are in I would say we are on the way to what we want to see. Let's do rounded full here. So that the, all right, now the image is rounded. All we need to do now is center the image. For that, I can also do, I can, apply the same technique. Let's try first setting the margin to auto. For setting margin for all directions, it's M dash auto, M is for margin, and that does not really work out. And I have no idea why. So let's have flex here again. And by adding flex, it should be back on its position. And let's do, wait, can I scroll down a little bit? Okay, all right, now that's much better. Let's do justify center. All right, and then items center. Oh my God, all right, that worked. That worked. And we have width and height to be 16. It's not as elegant as this one, but you get the point. We just have to like spend much more time to get exactly how we wanted it to look. Also, one cool feature I would like to show you is sometimes, not always, you see there are values right here, like 3.5 rem for w-14, and then w-16 is 4 rem. So what if you want to use something something custom, something which is in between those values just once? If you're going to use it more than once, I'd highly recommend you to put it in the config file. But what if we're just using it once, right? So for that, what we will do is we had 14, which was 3.5 rem. Let's do 3.8 rem. And the syntax to do a custom value is have brackets and say 3.8 rem, just like that. And that didn't work, definitely. Why? Oh, okay. So that's also one feature that you don't get when you have it this way. But don't worry, we're going to convert this into. I'll show you a trick on how you can bypass the limitations of having Tailwind as a CDN, and I'll show you how to set up both in just a few seconds. We're done with it almost. So we have a title, we have a tagline. We do have a title. Let's do a tagline. The tagline is going to be, let's put the, for now, let's put, or let's copy them. Well, is that spelling correct? Why does my editor? All right. I have no idea why. Okay. Cool. We have a description. Then we have a follow button. Let's quickly also make that. I'm going to do it as an anchor tag, but have the but without the href. And let's do follow. Follow. Right. So we have all the markup. Let's go back and you see. Wait, I'm zoomed in way too much. Yeah. So this is the card that we did. Is the image really small? Did we make that silly mistake? Yeah, the image is way too small. Okay. How about 28 and 32? This should be 28. Or wait, this should be 32. This should be 28. Right, we have a much bigger image, and 32 by half is 16. So let's do, yeah, that's again in center. All right, so for someone, I'm going to say class. Let's do, all right, the first thing that we have to do is, if you look in the design, we have everything in center. Let's do that. Flex, justify center. Flex call is for flex column. Okay, it's going to be items center actually. Right, now we have everything in center. Let's quickly do text to Excel. Let's here do class or let's have some, let's bump this padding to P8 actually. Yeah, much better. And right, or let's do px8 py to p6. Much better than what we had previously. Okay, so now let's do text Excel, make it a little bit bigger, and then we need some, I always prefer margin bottoms because, you know, MB1 maybe, not one, MB5. MB5 looks good. Let's make a button here finally, and let's close it off because we're running out of time. We'll also have to pick up a few questions now, and let's do px4 py, let's do py4 and px3 or 2. Let's do bg blue. So let's have a bg blue. Let's pick a bright 500 shade. Okay, we have a button. Let's do text white because we want a white text. And I think I made a mistake. This should be 2 and this should be 4 to make it look like a button. Yep, that's a much better button. Now, finally, let's do rounded MD. Right, that looks like a button. And let's do an MB dash 10 here. Let's see how our card looks. Okay, that looks much more wider than what I really want it to be. Like the proportions are kind of screwed. Let's go back, set a defined width. Let's do W dash. How about we do, I'm just using the autocomplete. How about we do with 48? That's way smaller than I thought it would be. Yeah, we need something more. 48, we have, I think we have 56. 56. 96 maybe. That's the highest that we have. Yep. So, all right. One more last final touch. Let's put a dot here. So there we go. That's a simple card design that I could come up with within an hour. And if you had to do the same thing with let's say pure CSS, it would take much longer than this. So just give me a second. So Saloni, can we like take questions now?
Yeah, we can.
Right. So actually, Daksh P has asked a question. Is it better to use classic CSS framework? Here, you have to write the same properties and or for every element, but in classical CSS framework, you just have to do a single class for every element. Here also you can turn Tailwind CSS into a completely traditional CSS framework. This is a utility first CSS framework, not utility only CSS framework. But I would still refer not using a traditional CSS framework, because the problem that Tailwind tries to solve is, let's say you have Bootstrap, you write more styles to override Bootstrap's default look and feel than what is necessary. So you ultimately give an inefficient CSS bundle to the client. So yeah, that's not correct. Um, Now talking about having to replicate the same styles again, you could just copy paste. Not a big deal, right? It's just going to be defined twice in HTML. And if you look more keenly, your browser is much more smart in assigning CSS classes to HTML elements than rendering and parsing the same CSS again and again. So this is a bit more performant than that. All right, now anyone has any more questions, you can just drop it. I'm going to read one by one. So how about we use yeah, we should use a different platform next time. Can we change the window size and direction? Window size and direction, I'm not entirely sure which window are you talking about. You can change, you can make Tailwind responsive, so um, you can make it have completely responsive design. Yeah, you can also support like a left to right layout, so you can okay, I'm talking about shadow size and direction. Shadow size, yes, you can quite easily change. Let me quickly show you. Okay, let's put it this way because it's much better now. Okay, we do not need a sidebar. So where did I have the card? This one. So notice how there's shadow MD. Let me actually make the card a little bit smaller. Much better. Right. So you have shadow MD. I could do just shadow, and it'll become like a much subtler shadow. And I could go as much as shadow to XL, and you're going to get like a pretty, what do you say? A pretty strong shadow. Yep, you can. Shadow direction, I'm not entirely sure. You can use a quick Google here. Oh, all right. So with shadow direction, I think you have to define like a custom config to get that to work. But yes, you can definitely do it. You can definitely have a custom shadow. I'm guessing you're trying to do that neomorphic design for which you have to like change the shadow and stuff like that. Let's do it. Just do normal Excel. Much better. All right, let's take the next question. So um What about large scale front end websites? Won't Tailwind be more cluttery? Yes, Tailwind. That's one of the drawbacks. Tailwind is going to be a little problematic with large scale websites, but there's no performance drop. Luckily, there have been benchmarks. You can look it up on Google. Tailwind is as performant as Bootstrap is, except I would argue it's much more performant because of the CSS file size. And you will have, as I said, you will have a much more robust, much more verbose HTML. You're not going to have just like a BTN class to make it look good. But over time you get used to it. And I would say this is much better than having to flip between your CSS file and HTML file. You have everything in just one place here. Right. So now let's talk about, does Tailwind have any drawbacks or classic CSS? Trying to advocate for classic CSS. That's really good. There is a drawback, and the drawback is a very nitpicky drawback, not a drawback per se. Let's say you want to use a feature which is not available in Tailwind. Now it's going to be a bummer, and you have to drop occasionally to writing pure CSS. And also, I think one limitation that we have right at the moment is you cannot have pseudo classes. You cannot style pseudo classes using Tailwind CSS. So if you want to do something like that, then you will have to write pure CSS. Any more questions? Anything else that you would like to can we combine Tailwind with a classful CSS? Can we combine Tailwind with a classful CSS? I think yes, you can do it. It requires you to have a custom, config. You have to make a config file. You have to use npm install to install Tailwind that way, and then you can definitely remove Tailwind's reset, which we've talked about earlier, and you can have I have at least used Tailwind along with Bootstrap, so you can do that as well, but it's going to look much more inefficient because now you have to give both Tailwind and Bootstrap. Yeah, that is all right. I guess that is pretty much it.